at 7:32. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Melissa, you can call the roll, please.
Mrs. Egan?
Here.
Mrs. Fahey?
Here.
Ms. Marcus?
Here.
Mr. Parati?
Here.
Mr. Rubinich?
Here.
Ms. Calderon?
Here.
Ms. Skelton?
Here.
Mr. Stampone?
Here.
Ms. Wadgwith?
Here. Okay. Notice of the March 15th, 2020 meeting of the Board of Education was emailed to the clerks of the boroughs of Essex Fells, North Caldwell, and Roseland, and to the Township of Fairfield, and to the editor of the Progress on January 7th, 2021, and the Star Ledger on the same day. Okay, so at this time, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank Mrs. Lauren Cherney, who has been a high school guidance counselor at West Essex for 10 years. Mrs. Cherney will be retiring as of July 1st. I personally know Mrs. Cherney. She was guidance counselor to all three of my children. She has always gone above and beyond. I won't get personal, but she really did help out my daughter when they had the college app kind of shut down one day, and she got locked out, and she went above and beyond contacting schools and really, just loves what she does and has been a great guidance counselor. So I just wanted to say on behalf of the board that we wish her many happy years and healthy years in retirement, and wish her the best of luck. So that's all I have this evening. Damien?
Thanks, Mary. Okay, so before I get into my superintendent's report, spring is approaching, and although we lost 1 hour of sleep, it was nice to have that extra hour of daylight today. And as each week goes by, it'll be nice to have that daylight going into the later hours of the day. So I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. I also want to acknowledge Mrs. Cherney, who served as our high school guidance counselor for 10 years. Mrs. Cherney, it certainly was a pleasure working with you. And on behalf of the Board of Education, we certainly wish you a happy and healthy retirement. I am pleased to announce the 2021 Governor's Educator of the Year Program Award recipients for the West Essex Regional School District. Each year, the New Jersey Department of Education recognizes the outstanding contributions of 2 teachers and 2 educational service professionals. These individuals are nominated by their peers. We typically recognize these award winners in person in January, and then we typically invite them to a board meeting in January for a more formal recognition. This year, we will honor them in the spring so they can receive the appropriate acknowledgement that they deserve. So we're hoping that in the spring, when the weather gets nicer, we can do something with the faculty, and then perhaps if we're able to do have an in-person Board of Education meeting near the end of the year, we certainly will bring them in person, and where the principals will speak in greater detail about their commitment to the profession and the contributions they've made to our school district. This year's recipients, and again, I'm not going to steal the principal's thunder because I know that they're really looking forward to doing that later in the year, but since the word is out, I definitely just want to mention their names tonight. So at the middle school, this year's Teacher of the Year is Seton Ahern, who is in our special education department. Congratulations, Ms. Ahern. And our Educational Services Professional of the Year at the middle school is our school nurse, Mrs. Denise Logan. So congratulations to the middle school award winners. And at the high school, our Teacher of the Year is Ms. Andrea Mondadori Lauget, who's in the Business Education Department. And our Educational Services Professional of the Year at the high school is Mrs. Karen Kinsey, our school nurse. So definitely well-deserved, and congratulations. And again, Mr. DiLiberto and Dr. Dunleavy will be back later in the year to speak in more detail on those award winners. Okay, I'll get into my report. Melissa, you can go to the first slide. Okay, as you know, we monitor the New Jersey COVID-19 activity level reports. I send out the weekly updates every Sunday. Our Northeast region, okay, which is Bergen, Essex, and Hudson County, we continue to remain in the orange high-risk category. Okay, we've been in that category from the week ending November 14th through the week ending March 6th. That's 17 weeks straight. Okay, that data has leveled off somewhat over the past 4 weeks. However, I must remind the board and everyone that we are still in that high-risk category. Okay, and we must remain cautious and continue with all of our promoted safeguards and measures, because there's nothing we want more than to be able to keep our buildings and programs open for business. So I know we're starting to get a little bit of cabin fever here, and frustrated with some of these measures, but we really need to take these next couple weeks very seriously and be cautious with what we're doing. Okay, our reopening committees. Several of our committees met the week of March 8th, specifically the Distance Learning Committee, the Building Operations Committee, and the Medical Committee. And just a reminder, these committees include our school community stakeholders, board members, parents, students, educators, healthcare providers, and medical professionals. Their input this year has been extremely important in our planning, and I want to thank all of them for their tremendous commitment. We meet multiple times, random times of the day, and everybody makes the effort to be there, and everybody contributes, and it's been a really great process this year, getting that input from everybody on the committee. Specifically, the Distance Learning and Building Operations Committee, we met and we talked entirely about marking period 4 planning. And with regard to medical, we had a discussion, and I'll be sharing some new procedures with regard to COVID in one of the upcoming slides. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, with regard to marking period 4, families can expect to receive a Genesis questionnaire this week, likely Wednesday, and that questionnaire will remain open through Friday. Okay, and a reminder that marking period 4 begins on April 19th and ends on June 22nd. Okay, this questionnaire will be very similar to the marking period 3 questionnaire, and we will be seeking a commitment to either full-time remote learning or in-person hybrid learning for the 4th marking period. Our cohorts will be developed based on the questionnaire results. We plan on publishing marking period 4 calendar, the marking period 4 calendar and cohort schedule on or about April 1st, which is actually the Thursday before we go into our long spring break. So we are making it a priority to develop these cohorts and publish the calendar for April, May, and June. So you'll get it on the Thursday going into spring break, and that'll give families 2 weeks notice to see what cohort their child is in, and they'll get a calendar that will extend all the way through the end of the school year. We will, just so everybody knows, we will maintain our 6 feet social distancing in all of our instructional and non-instructional space. And that comes with a firm recommendation from our local health department, which was one of our agenda items in our medical committee meeting last week. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And those committees will meet again, not next week, the week after, to finalize marking period 4 plans after we get our data back from that questionnaire. Okay, These were a couple agenda items that came out of our medical committee and out of the other two committees as well. These were unanimously supported, but highly endorsed by the medical team. The first one here is that we will have our district switch to remote learning for 1 week following spring break. Okay, so spring break week is the week before. I believe it's the 5th through the 9th. And then when we come back, that'll be the last week of the marking period. We will be fully remote that week. Okay, and there's a number of reasons as to why. And I'll just kind of summarize them briefly. But number one, we have started to receive notification of individuals that are traveling over spring break. And we anticipate to hear from additional travelers probably daily in the upcoming weeks. Okay, and with the state's quarantine advisory in place, in-person attendance will decrease and it will create less than optimal conditions for learning in our building. Additionally, if we do have positive cases that we become aware of over spring recess, by being fully remote, that will certainly allow our school and health officials to complete any appropriate contact tracing that they may need to complete. We can identify anyone that may be at risk for exposure, and we can make sure that they don't come into the building. Through our past experiences with switching to remote learning following extended breaks, we have found this time to be extremely beneficial in keeping our community safe. We feel the 1 week is sufficient, and again, that's unanimously supported by our health department, our school district physician, and our medical committee. Kind of going hand in hand with that is we are revising our travel guidelines, and we will make those effective for our district April 1st. We are adopting the CDC guidelines. And these, again, were revised after consultation with our health department, medical committee, and school physician. So just to kind of summarize the new travel guidelines, after day 10, if an individual stays home without testing and no symptoms are reported during their daily monitoring, they can return back to school or work. So that's a 10-day quarantine without any symptoms, with no testing. At this time, vaccinated individuals still have to quarantine. Okay, the difference here now is after day 7, if the individual tests negative with a viral test, it has to be a PCR test. They can go for a PCR test between day 5, 6, or 7 upon their return, as long as there's no symptoms that were reported during their daily monitoring. Obviously, if the test is negative, they can return to school or work. However, they cannot come back earlier than day 8. So day 10, without a test, as early as day 8, with a PCR test only. We're not accepting rapid tests. And then the last piece here is that people who have tested positive for COVID-19 in the past 3 months and recovered do not need to quarantine or get tested again during that 3-month period, as long as they do not develop new symptoms. They do have to provide documentation to our school nurses for that. And my disclaimer here is that these travel guidelines are subject to change. So certainly we will monitor these guidelines leading into up to April 1st, but we will be officially implementing these procedures on April 1st. And I will send this out to the community in an email blast tomorrow. And that's all I have for my report. Thank you, Mrs. Wojciech. I see a hand.
Damien,
Yeah.
thank you for that. Just one question. I think I know the answer, but I just want to ask it to be super clear. Individuals who have tested positive in the last 3 months are exempt from following this quarantine protocol. So anyone who had COVID prior to November or would need to follow the full protocol. Is that correct? Or is there a specific date to help people just so that there's no ambiguity?
Well, the way the language is written from the CDC is
Yeah.
past 3 months.
Okay.
They'll have to call the nurse,
Okay.
provide the date of that laboratory test with the positive date on it.
Okay.
Then they'll communicate with the nurse, and depending on when their travel dates are, the nurse can explain to them whether they fit that criteria.
Okay.
And
Now, again,
the test has to be a
these are
PCR
subject
test.
to change, and I know that they are looking at that, but that's what it is as of today, March 15th.
Okay.
And Damien, I'm sorry not to interrupt you, but of course that has to be a PCR test as well, not a rapid test.
Correct.
Okay, great. Moving along, we will go to the Megan Briscoe and her independent study.
So would you like, I guess I'll introduce Megan and the
Sure.
independent study. And I want to thank you very much, the board, Damien, for having us tonight and for hearing about this. So let me just introduce myself. I teach film review among English classes, but I'm lucky enough to teach an elective film course in the high school. And Megan was my student in 2018. She was incredibly impressive in class. Her analysis of all the films that we watched and studied really impressed me, and her final project floored me with just how creative and interesting and different it was, and how technically impressive it was. So I was honored when she asked me to do an independent study this year. I was extremely excited to do it, and it's in progress now. She is not disappointed. She's really continued that deep interest in film, and in my opinion, college level analysis of themes in film. So just to give you an idea of what the independent study is about, the goals of it are basically to help her achieve skills and content knowledge to help her continue to pursue film studies in college and beyond. She's interested in possibly pursuing film editing or other aspects of film studies as a career. So this is to help her prepare for that as well. Our goals when we meet are to basically help foster an appreciation, understanding of film as a complex art form and as a reflection of culture, our culture, human nature, all of the deep questions there that any art form touches on. To study it as a way to tell stories, as a form of art, and to study the practical and technical skills of production. And she's been doing this by critically evaluating films herself. Most of her work so far has been analysis of films, but we have touched a little bit on the technical aspects of it. And that's going to be more of our focus towards the end of the year. But she's been basically going decade by decade. We reorganize it that way, studying film from the very inception of film and from the Lumiere brothers in France and all of their innovations in film to we're about up to the 1960s, 1970s now. And she's been watching a wide array of films from these different decades. And we've been kind of focusing on horror because that's her interest and honestly mine too. But horror is really great for critical analysis because it's a reflection of a society's anxieties. And she has a lot to say about that in the writing that she's produced for this so far. So I don't want to take up too much time. I want to let Megan speak to this on her own, but I'm very impressed with her and her work and what she's done so far. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, I'm Megan Briscoe, and this is the film study that I am doing. And we can go to the next slide. So a little bit about me before I go more in depth about what the study is about. I've always been interested in films and movies, not only for entertainment purposes, but for analysis and getting a better understanding of how it works. I took the film review class in 9th grade with Mr. Meyerson, and it really sparked my interest and passion in film. I've been accepted and I am committed to Rochester Institute of Technology in the Film and Animation Production program. In this course, I hope to get a better understanding of the influence of different time periods and different films and the impact they had on the industry we know today. I have an interest in psychological thrillers and horror movies, so a lot of what I look at is focused on that. And I'm an active member of the film club, which I know is not approved yet, but is still one of my favorite things that have been introduced to us. And then we can go to the next slide. So this is a little overview of what I've done so far. As Mr. Meyerson said, we've been looking at decades. So I've looked at several decades starting from the 1900s and going currently to the 1960s. I will be looking at more decades later, but right now we're only at the 60s. So from 1900 to 1940 was an era considered the birth of film and was widely known for silent films. And that's a lot of like things people who are just like watch film for entertainment don't like know about today because they don't find interest in silent films. And then the 1940s to the 1969 was an era considered the golden era of film, where a lot of really good, important films were made that impacted the industry itself. I've taken deeper look into each specific period and conducted research analysis on the impact through essays and slideshows. And we can go to the next slide. So this is an excerpt from one of my first essays I did about German Expressionism, and I'm just going to read it so you guys can know what German Expressionism is about and what I've been looking at. So German Expressionism is the idea of using visual and hyper-expressive performance to capture the fears, inner thoughts, and desire of the time. German Expressionism started in 1916, when German audience has become less proprietal towards romance and action flicks since the beginning of World War I, and themes of violence, cruelty, and betrayal became more relevant topics for discussion. The ideas of violence, cruelty, and betrayal gave more daring filmmakers such as Fritz Lang and F.W. Murnau platforms to grow. The movement of German Expressionism heavily influenced and created the horror genre we know today. It focused mainly on shadows, deep, dark, intense feelings, betrayal, paranoia, etc. The movement takes reality and distorts it to create deep and intense emotions for the audience. And then we can go to the next slide. So along with my analysis and essay that I wrote about German Expressionism, I compared some scenes to some modern things we know today. This is a comparison of the shadows and the angles between Sweeney Todd, a movie from today by Tim Burton, and then Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, a movie from that era that was considered German Expressionism. We see a lot of Tim Burton today, him being one of like the main persons who has been inspired by German Expressionism. And you can see, like, if you looked at the Cabinet of Caligari without knowing like when it's from, you would think it's something that Tim Burton has made because of the way Tim Burton has expressed his specific look to the industry. And it's interesting to find that a lot of Tim Burton's interest and design and aesthetic for the movies came from movies such as Cabinet of Caligari and other German expressionistic movies. Let me go to the next slide. And then this is one of my more recent analysis that I did on the 1950s horror and how it shows the anxieties of the real world. And I'll read this excerpt from my essay. America, still reeling from the massive destruction of World War II, fell into the Cold War. 1950s horror clearly shared the true anxieties of people and the fear of nuclear war. Horror at the time was preoccupied with the ideas of space science invasion, which represented the fears of nuclear war and attack. In movies such as Godzilla, the first widespread atomic monster, Godzilla is a giant radioactive monster created by nuclear radiation. No such thing existed in this world, but it shows how people were scared of nuclear war, manifesting into attacks on people. Many of the horror and sci-fi films the plot revolved mainly around effects of nuclear radiation and atomic testing. Horror, sci-fi, and fantasy provide a healthy dose of escapism, but it also keeps one eye fastened on what we wish to escape from. People tend to watch films to escape the real world they are living in, but sometimes it also shows us what we are trying to escape from. So a lot of the 1950s, a lot of the things that were going on after World War II, and a lot of like the nuclear stuff and fears of nuclear radiation and communism, they were very like clearly shown through 1950s horror. Even just through Godzilla, we can see this radioactive monster. It shows, and it's made by Japanese people who were afraid of this nuclear radiation. And it's interesting to see how horror can manifest in ways of what the real world is showing. And it happens through many different decades. I've looked at it in the 60s also, how horror has revolved around what goes on in the world. And it is an escape for the people and an entertainment to kind of feel safe. And then we can go to the next one. So other things I have explored are the animation, sound, and color being introduced in the 20s and 30s, 1960s horror culture, which I talked a little bit about how horror shows throughout the time of what's going on. I looked in depth on George Romero's The Night of the Living Dead, the first widespread zombie movie. I looked at Walt Disney's very early animation. I looked at some early Alfred Hitchcock before his big hits like Psycho, Vertigo, Rear View Window. And then I physically made some shots of a silent film. And then we can go to the next slide. And going forwards, Mr. Meyerson and I are taking a more technical route. So I'm starting with some camera shots, doing like J cuts and L cuts, which is an editing technique where it works with the sound. So a J cut is when the sound from the next scene comes in early while still seeing the first scene, and then the next scene goes later. And then the L cut is the opposite, that the volume from the first scene goes into the next scene. And then I'll be working with montages and other different types of camera stuff. I also plan on working with sound and camera stuff, and while continuing to analyze the impactful films of each decade and the industry. And I think that's all.
Great. That was awesome, Megan. Thank you so much for that. It sounds very interesting. I'm not a horror movie person, but I like all the other, all the information that you had there. It was great. So thank you so much. Looks like you're enjoying it. Good job. Thank you. Okay, moving on, we will move on to our curriculum presentation by Ms. Kimberly Westervelt. She's the Interim Supervisor of English, Reading, and the Libraries.
Hello and good evening, everyone. I just want to say thank you to Megan and Mr. Meyerson for sharing your film study this year. That was actually very interesting. As a horror movie fan myself, I didn't realize how much of that really, how interesting it really is. So English Reading and Libraries Department. So first let's meet the staff, right? Let's meet the department. So on the next slide, you will see our middle school team. These are some of our members from the middle school from the English Reading and Library Department. On the next slide, we have our high school team. These are English teachers and librarian at the high school team. And if you go on to the next slide, we will talk about our goals that we've been focusing on. So this year, we focused on increasing student growth and achievement while also balancing the health and well-being of our students and staff. And so as you can see on the next slide, increasing student growth and achievement. Our teachers this year have participated in professional development aligned with hybrid and virtual learning to really grow their profession, and as they've had to shift their entire craft this year. Many of our teachers also have engaged in professional development in our AP capstone program that we implemented this year. And our department also focused on teaching sensitive content as well, so that we make sure we are able to handle the conversations and guide the students in facilitated discussions in the classroom in a safe environment. We've also, some of our teachers from the department have also participated in the enrichment tutorials at the middle school. Miss Erica Serio, our 7th grade reading teacher, did the water project with the students. This was inspired by the book that the 7th graders read, A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park. And the students designed the logo for the fundraising campaign. And in the end, we've raised $484 for the water project. So it's something to be proud of. Mr. Meyerson also presented a tutorial at the middle school on special effects in film. And Miss Alicia Perez did a lesson on Amanda Gorman and the power of spoken word. We also have at the middle school, we have the night squad. So if students need help on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we have teachers available to assist them with anything connected to English or reading. And at the high school, we have the writing center on Mondays and Thursdays, so that if you have, an assignment coming up, a homework to do, anything you need help with, you can just pop into the writing center and a teacher's there to assist you. We also use data to make sure that we are progressing, to make sure that we are growing, and then we also use our data to drive our instruction. So at the middle school, we have map testing. At the high school, we use the Linkit assessments. We also use our end of year assessment for growth objectives. And throughout the year, we have ongoing formative and summative assessments that guide our instruction. Our next goal, the other goal, was promoting the health and well-being of students and staff. And so we recognize the importance of students being actively involved in school to promote their health and well-being. And so many of our teachers in this department are advisors in the club. So at the middle school, our teachers advise the book club, the Builders Key Club, Nightlights Literary Magazine, the Nightly News, TREPS, Gifted and Talents Brogate, Library After School. And at the high school, our teachers advise the Multicultural Club, Library After School, the National English Honor Society, Wessex Wire, Peer Leadership, and the Quiz Bowl. It was also really important this year that our teachers incorporated screen and brain breaks in their lesson plans. So if you are home with your children during the day and you see them running through the house looking for something when they should be in class, that could be an intentional scavenger hunt that a teacher built into the class to get the kids to step away from the screen and to kind of just also give their brain a little break for the day, get them up and moving and get their blood circulating so that when they come back, they're ready and recharged to go for the rest of the lesson. You may also see your child have their screen closed and they're reading. Many of our teachers have included that in their lessons where the kids are to do some reading on their own during class time so that they can put the screen down, focus on a hard copy of a textbook. We've also been utilizing the All Classes Meet Wednesdays for support for the students, and many of our teachers utilize this time for one-on-one conferencing, which is one of the most effective strategies in improving writing. So if you do have a student, if your child is struggling with writing or in anything, just say, hey, see if your teacher can meet with you on Wednesday, because the teachers are available all day and that's what they've been utilizing the time for. And then I also find it important as the supervisor to make sure that I'm taking care of the well-being of my staff. And so we have these monthly department check-ins where I just ask the teachers a couple questions. How are they doing, both professionally and personally, making sure that, just checking in and seeing where they are. At the beginning of the year in September, it was really important that they set self-care goals. The saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so we focused on making sure that we are taking care of ourselves this year so that we can be the best educators we can be. And throughout the year, I've just been checking in with them again to see how they're doing with their self-care goals. And some days it's more of a struggle than others, but overall, we are taking care of ourselves. So what's happening in the classroom? What's some stuff that's going on in the classroom? On this slide right here, you can see this is from 8th grade reading teacher, Miss Moss Colucci. Her class did an independent reading project. And her goal with this project was to have the students step away from the computer. She really wanted to give them a hands-on project. So she coordinated pickup times where kids came up and picked up their posters. And she had this really complex assignment where they got to read any book of their choice to also foster the love of reading. And then her project fostered critical thinking and planning to connect all of the pieces. And so here you see some sample work where the students, the first one is from Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and then the second one is from Then She Was Gone. So the students really had to do a hands-on project, which I think is excellent in a digital age where they were able to actually physically work on something and show and highlight their illustration skills. On the next slide, we have work this is from our 9th grade English honors class, Miss Kira Wild's class. She does this really cool project with her students called the Sneetch Solution, right? And so in this, the kids it's a UN peacekeeping mission. And the purpose of this project it's about research. The students are doing a lot of research, and it's an interdisciplinary project because they have to focus on geographical location, ethnicities, government, economy, civil liberties. So these are things that the students are researching to figure out how to prevent or stop a genocide from happening in the island of Sneetch, this fictitious island. And so this is a really cool project. I actually sat in on a lesson today acting as one of the UN members, and the group that was presenting had this amazing plan where they were basically asking for $1 billion from the UN to support their proposal. And it's really cool to see all of the research that the kids do and what they know about how like a government runs and how a society runs, and then coming to the UN asking for money. So this is a really cool project. On the next slide, you will see 2 pictures these are from Miss Alicia Perez, our English 3 and true crime teacher. The picture on the left is actually a picture from a student perspective. A student was presenting in her true crime class. And then the picture on the right is from her English 3 class. And the picture on the right, you see this is the students, they're facing each other. So the students who are in class and in person are working together, where the students on the Zoom call are working virtually together in their breakout rooms. And so as you can see, we can't push the desks together, but the students are still able to turn around and talk to one another and get that interaction that's really important during class time. And then it was duly noted from the last board meeting to make sure that we highlight some of our successful students in the field of English. And so the first alumni I would like to introduce is Mr. Noah Eagle. He is from the class of 2015. And so after enjoying his English classes and journalism, public speaking, sports management classes at West Essex High School, he then went on to graduate from Syracuse University in 2019. He is now in his 2nd season as the radio voice for the LA Clippers on AM 570. He's also acted as one of the hosts of Clippers Live pre-post-game show on Fox Sports West. He's covered the NBA Summer League, G League Winter Showcase, and Draft Lottery Tiebreaker for NBA Entertainment, and was a sideline reporter of the past 2 Junior NBA Global Championships on Fox Sports. He also called virtual reality NBA broadcasts for Turner Sports, and he works as a studio host and play-by-play announcer at Tennis Channel, including covering the 2020 French Open in Paris. In January of 2021, Eagle became the first person to do play-by-play for the NFL on Nickelodeon during the Bears-Saints NFC wildcard game, which was a really cool experience if anyone had a chance to watch that game. He also calls college basketball games on FS1. He can often be heard on the Sirius XM NBA channel. So just wanted to highlight Mr. Eagle and congratulate him on his success. On the next slide, I also want to highlight Mr. Brian Gallion, class of 2015 also. He is a published journalist. After graduating from West Essex in 2015, Brian earned a bachelor's degree in journalism in May 2019 and a master's in investigative reporting in December 2020, both from the University of Maryland. Brian worked on a project at the Howard Center for Investigative Journalism in the summer of 2019 about the impacts of extreme heat on low-income Baltimore neighborhoods, which won 6 national professional awards. Last year, he led 2 national investigations into housing and homelessness at the center that were published by news outlets across the country, including the New York Times, the Associated Press, and the Washington Post. He also covered Donald Trump's first Senate impeachment trial in early 2020 for Capital News Service. So congrats to Brian and his amazing career, and he looks like he's off to great places. We also have Mr. Jake Handler, class of 2011. He wrote a children's book, Rock On Billy, which was published in 2017. Since publishing, he has been a guest author at many schools and libraries across different states. Most recently, on March 2nd, he orchestrated a Read Across America Day, where he was Zoom reading to try to literally read across America by virtually reading to one class of students in as many states as possible. He was able to cover 14 states, and that he hopes to expand that number each year. In addition to local music and bookstores, Rock on Billy can also be found online on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. What makes Rock on Billy so special and frankly enjoyable to write is its ability to serve as a kid-friendly introduction to music history. The premise is about a young boy who's trying to become a famous rock star, and along his journey, he meets 4 beetles in the ground, monkeys playing in a tree, Floyd dressed in pink, and in fact, there are 22 different artists and bands mentioned. While Rock on Billy's target audience is K to 5, its uniqueness allows it to be enjoyed by all ages of readers. A child might fall in love with a little beetle that has a funny haircut and not care why his name is Ringo. Meanwhile, an adult might fall in love with a little beetle that has a funny haircut because his name is Ringo. In addition to the many music references throughout Rock on Billy, the book is filled with rhyming words, colorful illustrations, and a strong moral of accountability and work ethic. So congratulations to Jake. The last student of success I want to mention and highlight is Miss Isabella Bonbini. She's from the class of 2019, and she is now currently a sophomore at Rutgers University, majoring in journalism and cinema studies, and has a minor in creative writing. She'd recently reached out to 7th grade English teacher, Miss Dina Hagel, and I asked her if I could share this with you guys, and she said yes. And so she says to Miss Hagel, I took your 7th grade English class from 2013 to 2014. I'm currently a sophomore at Rutgers University studying journalism and cinema studies with a minor in creative writing. After undergrad, I hope to attend a graduate school where I can pursue dramatic writing. It's my dream to one day write for TV and film, and this path is one that started indirectly in your classroom. There was one day where we must have been proofreading some of our work, and you said something in passing about how you hoped to read my work professionally one day. It was a small remark, but you were the first person to ever put the idea in my head that writing could be a career for me, and those words have stuck with me ever since. I so looked forward to going to your classes every day, and you gave me the writing support and foundation that led me to where I am now. I cannot thank you enough for giving me confidence in my ability to write and for inspiring me to explore a passion that I didn't know existed previously. So that just gives me all the feels, knowing that Ms. Hagel has that impact and that Isabella has now gone on to further her studies in writing. And so on behalf of the English department, we wish Izzy the best of luck on her journey. And finally, I would be remiss if I did not express my gratitude tonight. Had Miss Stacy Casillas not given birth to her beautiful baby boy, I would not have had this opportunity to work so closely with the English reading and library teachers. During the pandemic, many of them have had their own personal struggles, and yet each of them show up every day with passion and enthusiasm for the children of West Essex. And they truly model resiliency for the students, and I could not be more proud to work alongside them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Westervelt. That was great. I really appreciate that and giving us that update, and congrats to all the students. I did see Noah Eagle. I mean, I know who he is, and I've seen many of his things, and we kept flipping back and forth with the Super Bowl between the Nickelodeon and him emceeing it, and then the regular channel. So yeah, they're wonderful. I know Damien would like to say something as well.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Westervelt, for a great presentation, and thanks so much for sharing alumni updates. It's really great to see what our students are doing when they leave our campus. So thanks so much for that. And I want to thank Mr. Meyerson for being here tonight and for taking the time and for your willingness to work with Megan on her independent film project. And congratulations, Megan, on your acceptance to the Rochester Institute of Technology, and we wish you the best of luck.
Yes. Congratulations. Yes. Excellent. And if you two,
Thank you.
Mr. Meyerson and Megan, if you don't want to stay on the rest of the meeting, you don't have to. You can stay if you'd like, but if you want to leave, you can certainly leave and we won't be offended.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. Yes. Have a great night.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Are there any comments moving on from board members on the presentations? Go ahead, Jill.
I just wanted to express my appreciation for both of those presentations. I know they all just disappeared. Actually, Mrs. Kimberly, you're still here. This was fantastic. It was an inspiring, I don't know how long we've been listening, 20, 30 minutes or so. And it's just really wonderful to hear firsthand some of the things that are going on right now with our students and some of the accomplishments that have come from students from West Essex. And it's one thing to hear about courses when we hear about courses that are being offered, and it's just in theory. But tonight's presentations really brought to life some of the great work and learnings that are going on here. So thank you. I know you had other things to do, I'm sure, rather than do a slide, show for us. But I hope, I see that there are well over 100 people on the call tonight. And I hope that this also just, kind of touches home to people, because I know I don't know what my daughter's doing all day as much as I ask her. So this is fantastic to hear. So thank you for your time. and commitment.
Thanks, Jill. Anyone else have any comments? No? Okay. Do we have any board committee reports? Go ahead, Ray.
Thanks, Ray. Okay, so I have a committee report. This is for the Finance Committee. We met on March 10th. Attendees were Cindy Egan, Melissa Kita, Damian Machochi, Frank Barati, Mary Watajwitz, and myself, Ray Stampone. Meeting was at 6 p.m. March 10th, and we did it via Zoom this time. As I briefed the last time, we talked about a few of the items, facility upgrades. So the UV disinfectant system. So right now we're just gonna put that on hold because we're waiting for this Title I ESSER2. It's a grant program that offers grant money, and found out that we could potentially use that grant money towards the purchase of the UV system. So we're gonna hold right now on that, but we are still going to request Pure, which is the company that does the system, to have a Zoom meeting with us and the Finance Committee and go over all the details of the system so we can get more educated on it. So when it comes time to make a decision, we'll know a little bit more about it. The ventilators, we're hoping by this meeting, March 15th, we'll hopefully be able to get approval to go out for advertising for the work. For the electrical upgrade, was published and we're awaiting bids. So we're going to have a pre-bid meeting on the 25th of March, and then the bid openings on April 20th. And then a lot of the meeting basically focused on the tentative or preliminary budget, which we'll be voting on tonight's meeting. So we talked about things such as the tax levy, our debt services, special revenue, state aid, and then expenditures. So just so you have an idea, some of the expenditures that we're looking for the upcoming year is a new position for a high school chemistry teacher, additional school safety coordinator. We're going to keep all the current academic, athletic, and extracurricular activities will continue. From a curriculum perspective, we're going to continue with textbooks, upgrades, academic supplies, professional development, and working on improving test scores. We have to maintain our current contractual obligations, salaries, and benefits are part of the expenditures. We're going to be doing 6 classroom renovations, which include new ceilings, lights, asbestos abatement, and new flooring and paint. We're going to be maintaining our current Chromebooks that we have, and I'll talk about it, the new Chromebooks in a second. Some additional security cameras and purchasing of new equipment, such as a Bobcat and a dump truck for the school. The budget is based on basically 100% student population in the fall, so that's where we'll be back in person in the fall. And then from the Chromebooks, so we are going to purchase Chromebooks with this year's budget. The goal is to buy them outright instead of leasing them like we've done in the past. We found that it's cheaper to buy them than to lease them. We're going to be ordering 900 of them, which we already have secured. They're due in about 6 months prior to the fall semester. And they're being purchased through Staple Technology, and they'll be HP computers, G7s. And we're going to phase out the old Chromebooks, and what we do with them is we actually sell them to get back some money. And these Chromebooks come with the white glove service, so that means there's maintenance that goes along with them. So when they break, you get a quick turn on getting them repaired. And the meeting concluded at 6:55 p.m.
Sorry, Fred. I forgot to mute it myself. Okay, thanks, Ray. That's great. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding the finance meeting? No? Okay. So then we will move on at this point to public comments. At this time, I'll open up the floor for public comments on agenda items only in accordance with bylaw 0167, a copy of which is available on the district's website. The board is now opening the meeting for a period of public comment. Please remember to announce your name, place of residence, and group affiliation if appropriate. Your statements will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. The board will, of course, consider your comments as they relate to its obligation to effectively govern the West Essex School District. Please remember that agenda items are the items we will be voting upon tonight and not the presentation. So if you have any questions or comments on any of the presentations this evening, please save those to the second public comment section and not at this time. And also any questions regarding your individual child's learning should be directed to their teacher or supervisor or building principal. And if we have any comments, Melissa, or questions, please raise your hand and Melissa will let you, she'll let you in.
I don't see any hands.
No hands? Okay, great. Okay, then we will move on to our agenda items. Frank, do you want to take finance?
Frank, you're muted.
Yes, I'll do finance, but can you scroll up 1 second because there's one item I believe I have to abstain on. I just want to make sure.
It's number 8.
Okay, no problem. You can scroll back down now.
Frank, I would do 8 and 9.
And 9, yeah, I was just looking at that as well, yeah.
Okay. The following finance motions are made at the recommendations of the superintendents of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 13, will be voted on in one motion. I so move.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay, Melissa, you can call the roll.
Miss Egan,
Yes.
Miss Fahey,
Yes.
Miss Marcus,
Yes.
Mr. Parati,
Items 1 through 7, yes. Items 8 and 9, I will abstain, and items 10 through 13, yes.
okay. Mr. Rubinich,
Yes.
Miss Calderon,
Yes.
Miss Skelton,
Yes.
Mr. Sampone,
Yes.
Miss Wojcicki.
Yes. Cindy, do you want to take curriculum, please?
The following curriculum special education motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 9, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, Melissa, you can call the roll.
Miss Egan,
Yes.
Miss Fahey,
Yes.
Miss Marcus,
Yes.
Mr. Parati,
Yes.
Mr. Rubinich,
Yes.
Miss Calderon,
Yes.
Miss Skelton,
Yes.
Mr. Stampone,
Yes.
Miss Wojcicki.
Yes. Okay. Anne, do you want to take personnel?
Sure. The following personnel motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 16, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Melissa, you can call the roll.
Miss Egan,
Yes.
Miss Fahey,
Yes.
Miss Marcus,
Yes.
Mr. Parati,
Yes.
Mr. Rubinich,
Yes.
Miss Calderon,
Yes.
Miss Skelton,
Yes.
Mr. Stampone,
Yes.
Miss Wojcicki.
Yes. Tony, do you want to take miscellaneous?
Okay, Madam President. The following miscellaneous motions are made at the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. Anything placed on this agenda, items 1 through 10, will be voted upon in one motion, and I so move.
Second. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, Melissa, you can call the roll.
Miss Egan,
Yes.
Miss Fahey,
Yes.
Miss Marcus,
Yes.
Mr. Parati,
Yes.
Mr. Rubinich,
Yes.
Miss Calderon,
Yes.
Miss Skelton,
Yes.
Mr. Stampone,
Yes.
Ms. Wadewitz.
Yes. Okay, at this time, we will open up the floor again for public comments on non-agenda items. Please raise your hand.
Okay, I see one hand, Lisa Smith.
Okay.
So, okay. Lisa Smith, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Lisa Smith. I live in Fairfield. I have one child in high school, one in middle school, and they both attend in-school learning. I'm very encouraged by the current cohort situation at the high school and middle school. And aside from having to get up earlier, I definitely see my kids are happier for sure. So my question is, if a higher percentage of kids choose in-person learning for marking period 4, how do we make sure that either we stay the same or increase the number of in-school days or hours? Because we don't really want to revert back to more cohorts.
A question, Damien, do you want to answer that? Or can you?
Well, certainly we want to maximize the as much in-person learning as we can. So we've talked about that in our committee meetings. There's people from every stakeholder group that are represented, and we've talked about a variety of options. But the first step is we need to get the questionnaire back, and we need to look at that data, and then we will put together a cohort system that works within all of the parameters that we need to work within, and with our goal of trying to maximize in-person learning to the highest extent possible.
Thanks, Damien. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Mary, Lisa Smith's hand just went back up, and I don't know if that was on accident or not, but that's the only hand.
That's fine. You can let her.
Okay.
Lisa, are you there? Lisa?
Lisa, you should be able to unmute yourself. Oh, let's see. Lisa?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I was having problems doing it.
No problem.
So is the main constraint, if more people sign up for in-person learning, is the main constraint the 6 feet social distancing?
Correct. We have to maintain 6 feet social distancing, so there's a maximum number of people that we can fit in our building on one given day. So that's definitely a major factor.
So that stems from the Department of Health guidelines, correct?
Correct.
And is that ultimately, do they basically go with what the CDC says? Sometimes
they have a higher standard than the CDC, but right now that's firm guidance from the state and from our local health department.
The reason I'm just bringing it up is and I don't know if you've seen, there's various studies that show, that are coming out showing there doesn't seem to be a big difference between 3 feet and between 3 feet to 6 feet. So I don't know whether you guys have considered that or the health department has considered that, or whether they're just set on going with, oh, the CDC says this, so unless they change, we're not going to change.
I'm aware of some of those studies. What I will say is with the 6 feet, It allows us, should there be a case in our building, it really puts us in a good position that we are not quarantining entire classes because everybody stays outside of that 6 feet boundary. All the classrooms are set up with students being 6 feet apart. The teachers are 6 feet apart. In the event there was a positive case, it really protects our staff and our students from exposure and from us having to send out a lot of people to be quarantined because they were within that 6 feet criteria that the CDC has established as a close contact.
So ultimately, if a lot of kids decide to do in school, we may have to go back a step. That is a possibility, correct?
It is a possibility.
All right. Well, I would hope we could definitely try to find ways to move forward and not move back. And obviously, I know it's a challenge, but just hoping we can continue to move forward more. Thank you for your time, though. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, we agree. We're hoping to, continue to move forward.
Okay, so next is Antoinette Kirstner.
Okay.
That Kirstner from Fairfield on Sand Road. How is everyone? I'm sorry I joined late.
That's okay.
I'm just kind of catching bits and pieces, and I would like to talk or discuss or ask questions around this 6-foot rule, in particular where across the state, there seems to be a variation of that rule. I understand that recently the Newark school districts are going to allow all their students back into the building full time. And I understand that it's going to be less than 6 feet. Newark is part of Essex County, and I am not sure. And part of the decision as to how many people can go into the building, is the infection rate based. I don't know exactly which mapping we all use, whether it's an Essex County map, a sheriff map, or whatnot. But if we were back into the yellow, that we would be allowed to go in more often. So for those two pieces, I'm still confused as to why we cannot get back in person. In particular, my preference would be 100% in the building, full days. And based on what the person prior to me had indicated, there's plenty of studies that indicate that this is possible. And I'm trying to understand why we cannot do better for our kids and get them in full days, 100%. And why is there such a variation with other districts? And what can we do to make this change? And I do have a second point and question to make.
Okay, Antoinette, why don't you ask your second question, then we can answer you.
So if the answer is that we're going to continue this hybrid situation, which I really hope not, and I deplore this entire Board of Ed to reconsider that as well. That when are parents going to get involved in any kind of involvement in helping making decisions, that if we are going to be partly remote, where things like specific teachers only teach to a remote class and specific teachers only teach to in-person kids, so that there is a better focus on the children and a better focus on the lessons, because I can't even imagine how challenging it is for one teacher to pay attention to kids in the room and kids online. That must impact the lessons and the learning opportunities for both kids. So I would like to be part of that group or committee that will come up with even more creative ways to handle alternative plans, albeit my first wish is for the children to be 100% in school pre-COVID.
Okay, so when you're talking hybrid, you mean for next fall, not currently.
Well, yeah, I can only imagine that would be impossible to do now, and I would expect that not to be part of the request. It's really for the fall.
Okay. So we do have committees currently that have parents on the committees. I don't know if we will be, maybe Damien can speak to that. You know, we have a buildings operations committee. We have a distance learning committee. We have medical committee, extracurricular activity committees that all have parents on those committees. As Damien had stated earlier, they have teachers, administrators, board members, community members. I don't know if they will be changing. Like I said, Damien can speak to that maybe a little bit better. But we do have committees already established, which we had established, before this current school year. Okay. Damien?
Can I get a response on the varied plans? And even in Fairfield, our elementary school, which I'm fully aware of what's going on there, they have potential plans of doing less than 6 feet, albeit we have to be a certain color on the map, right? Which is yellow, I think. Depending on the map you look at, quite frankly, I think, Fairfield is in the green, but that's another argument for another day.
Mary, may I just make a comment regarding the NORC?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so as of today, as of this minute, the NORC schools do intend to go back on April 12th, but they are not going back with less than 6 feet between the students, no more than 10 students per class room, and one teacher. That's as of this moment from one of the vice presidents of the union.
Okay.
I heard differently, so thank you for confirming that.
So I have a couple comments, Mary. So right now we have about 16 parents involved in our committees, and many of them have 2 children in the district, 1 in each building. So we did that because we wanted to try to have a diverse group of parents representing middle school and high school. And we also have parents from every town on the committees. Next year, we certainly will continue to utilize our parents. I don't think we're going to have as many committees. I think we're going to probably condense down to one committee, but we certainly will continue with that committee work because it has worked very well for us. With regard to the 6 feet, I can only speak on behalf of West Essex, and I can tell you, and I know there's some board members on this meeting that are part of our medical committee. We are choosing to follow our health officer's firm guidance of staying at 6 feet. We found it to be very successful. I just want to remind everyone, we have been open since October, and the 6 feet is something that we're committed to sticking with right now. If the guidance change, we certainly will revisit it. But right now we're sticking with the recommendation of our health officer of 6 feet. Next year, we certainly are hoping that we can, definitely progress. We're committed to, most likely opening 5 days per week, a full day of school, implementing lunch back into the equation. So we certainly want to, we want things to look much differently next year. And we are looking at, having some remote teachers and different things. But yeah, we have, basically we're going to have a multitude of plans for next year because we haven't even received any guidance from the DOE as far as will we still have the option of remote learning for students? So what will be the social distancing requirements if they drop to 3 or 4 feet or whatever? That would allow us to set up our classrooms differently. So all great points. These are all things that we're already talking about. Once we get the 4th marking period set up, we're probably going to shift right away to planning for next school year.
Mary, Damien, can I just ask you to maybe explain, because people may not understand how the health department overlap works, because it would seem confusing if you didn't understand that it's not a county-based system. So can you just maybe share that for anyone who might not know how that
Sure.
Challenge works?
So thank you, Mrs. Skelton. Yeah, so within our county, every municipality has their own health department. And so within Essex County, some of those health officers even oversee multiple towns. So for example, just our sending districts alone, we have 3 different public health officers. We have North Caldwell that oversees Fairfield and Caldwell. There's a West Caldwell public health officer. There's the West Orange public health officer that oversees Essex Fells. And Roseland is actually linked to the East Hanover public health officer. And then it goes just down the county like that. So each health officer may be telling their each school district they may be giving them a different message, but I can tell you that our health officer here in North Caldwell, we're following their guidance. Maybe some districts are electing to not follow the guidance, but we are going to stick with that recommendation of 6 feet. And our medical team, which is healthcare providers, physicians, parents, board members, athletic trainers, nurses, we're all unanimous in maintaining that position for the 4th marking period.
So I have further comments to that, Mr. Macciocci. What about the mental health concerns for our students with not being in the building? I feel it's not good enough. With the varying approaches to getting children in school across states, which demonstrate that there is no higher infection rate if you have children in the building with less than 6 feet, full days, versus not, and the varying decisions that are being made across counties in this state, and not taking into consideration children's social well-being and mental health as being a major part of your decision, I really disagree with your decisions to continue the 6-foot rule. And that, to me, it's just handcuffs on our kids to get back to normal and for families to get back to normal. And I'm finding it very strange that if I heard from others, and that's why I jumped on, that after spring break, the intent is to go remote for a week, when quite frankly, the infection rates are happening outside of the school and not in the school, and that we should proceed as normal, given that this week you had an issue with contact tracing. I'm not sure exactly why, with multiple infection rates outside the school. I wonder why after spring break is so different. I'm extremely frustrated with this, and
Antoinette, I'm going to have to cut you off at this point, Antoinette.
Yeah,
Listen,
if you cut
time,
me off, I will continue.
I just want to say.
Then I'll get my second turn.
No, I'm just going to cut you off at this point because you have had a little time to talk. I mean, our school is open, I think, as Damien said, for any student who wants to attend, they can come 4 days a week. The school is fully open. I understand what you're saying about the social emotional. It's still open. I mean,
middle
we're
school
open
is
till
only
12,
2
17,
days.
and then they have class afterwards. Listen, I mean, it's open for whoever wants to come. I don't know if your children are coming or if they're staying home. Okay,
they should be coming in full days, and the middle school is only 2 days, and it should be better than that.
Well, and that's the capacity we have right now. And I will let Damien speak to this, but we are following the CDC guidelines. We're following the Department of Health.
CDC guidelines are changing as we speak.
But they haven't changed yet. And I think, as Damien said, we're willing to change as those guidelines change. But as of right now, the guidelines are still 6 feet. And that is what we are following for the safety of our schools. This way, it helps with our, contact tracing, as he said. And that's why things are, when they're happening outside of school, we don't have to shut down our school because it's not, affecting our students in school. So if Damien would like to speak again, that's fine. Otherwise, I think, we've given you fair,
I can appreciate that. Thanks.
And again, like he said, we're moving forward next year. This is the guidelines that we're following. We followed the CDC and the Department of Health all year long. Our health department does not recommend the 4 feet, and we are following their guidelines. And I understand that you're not happy with that, but this is where we are at right now. And as the guidelines change, we will be changing too. And that's why we're changing the travel restrictions after the vacation. We are moving forward. Damien, do you have anything else to comment?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you, Antoinette. We appreciate your comments and we hear you completely. Melissa, is there anyone else?
No, there isn't.
Okay. All right, then, at this point, I would like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second,
Deb, do you want to read us out?
there being no further business before the Board of Education, be it resolved that this public meeting be adjourned at 8:46.
Great.
I so move. May I have a second?
Yeah.
Second.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great night.
Great job, Kim. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.